these things and all things Singapore for a while. For those who don't know you yet, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Choon. I'm one of the two founders of a Singapore-based finance webcomic and blog called the Woke Salaryman. With the Woke Salaryman, what we try to do is we try to make the complex and often inaccessible or technically difficult topic of personal finance more accessible and also more fun to read by doing it primarily in comic form, but also through illustrations and also like nowadays content online, like Instagram stories and things like that. We've been doing that for about 3 years now. We started it as a side hustle, and I think 10 months into it, we managed to monetize it. Then we shortly after that quit our jobs, and now we're doing it full time with a very small company. Yeah, so that's what I do. Lah. Yeah.
Amazing. So, how did you first start that artistic journey? Were you a artist as a child, or was it something that came to you later?
I think all kids draw. Like I forgot who said it. I think it might be Picasso. Maybe I attribute wrongly, but the quote is something like all children can draw. You forget how to draw when you become an adult, which is a bit sad, lah, right? And if you see like I think it was Picasso because you go and look at Picasso's art as he learned how to draw and become an artist. He did some very like realistic stuff when he was like becoming an adult. But later on, because he sort of mastered the realistic form, he went back to drawing like a kid. That's why his stuff looks like the way it does, you know. So it's like it's also about unlearning for him. So I think every kid draws, like I think people who become artists a lot of time, you just didn't stop. The impetus for me to really want to do art, I've been drawing for fun anyway for a long time, but the impetus came when I was 14 years old. I watched this movie called Princess Mononoke or Mononoke. I always forget which one to say it. Don't know it's 2M or 2N. Mononoke it's by Studio Ghibli or Ghibli. I also don't know how to say that one. Directed by this man called Hayao Miyazaki, and it's incredible. Lah. So when I was 14, I saw that and I'm like, wow, this kind of thing can exist. I want to do this for my life now. So that's when I decided, like, wow, this is what I want to do. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think that's why you started your career, obviously, on the media side, etc. And yet you also decided to make that additional step also of becoming an entrepreneur, right? Of being a
Mm,
co-founder
mm.
to build something new of your own. So how did that start for you?
Well, that one is like much longer. So when I was in uni studying university, I was still, I think, quite naive. And naive has a very negative connotation, but it's not that bad. Cannot, I always tell my students when say this word, I say, please, I'm saying naive, not because you are inherently naive. You just haven't seen enough of the world yet. And that's normal as a student, right? Because in uni, it's like a coral reef of safety for you to be as idealistic as you want. Then when you go out to the market, then your ideals will be tested. And my ideals were tested in a very rough way because when I was still in uni, like my dream was to work for Studio Ghibli, which was that studio that made that film that I said when I was 14. And I was so naive, like I said, like I told myself a few things that were in hindsight very too idealistic. Like I said, number one, if I can get a job at Ghibli Studio, I don't care what it is. If I have to sweep the floor, I also do it. I'll do it for free because it's just how much I want that job. So completely forgetting about like how I might add value because I was okay with being a janitor. Not saying that janitor no value lah, but obviously you go Studio Ghibli, you want to be an artist. Number two, I told myself something along the lines of like, well, if I can do anything animation related, I get 3K salary enough already. That's the cap I need if I can get a career in animation. Which later on, as I learned about money and how much it costs to have a house and things, then like okay, 3K not enough. And the last thing that I told myself was, I said, well, if I ever not if I graduate and I don't become an animator, I might as well kill myself. And I didn't say this in a depressing way. It's just an identity thing. Like I locked in animator as my identity so solidly that there was no room for anything else because that was how strongly I believed in it. And yet, when I came out to work, back to your question, so I went one huge round about entrepreneurship. I realized that actually 9 to 5 not very fun sometimes. It's not that 9 to 5 is too long; it's that it doesn't give you a lot of room for options. So like younger folks listening to this who got jobs after COVID might not realize that actually before that, like you just go to office every day, man. And it can be quite difficult. And it's not that I don't want to do that. I just don't want to have to do that when I don't feel like it. That's why entrepreneurship always came around, like eventually to my head, like, wow, if only I can have my own thing. Then that also slowly became my dream. And I realized that it's very hard to fulfill that dream in animation, unfortunately. Yeah, so something had to give, lor.
Yeah, I think there's something in the background that you're touching, or paper or clips. Yeah,
Oh, okay, here, okay. I'll stop that.
yeah. So, so I think you said something that's quite true, right? Which is I think all of us are very passionate when we were young, right? We have
Mm.
this passion. For me, it was like, okay, I'm going to become a vaccine researcher.
At what
Uh,
age did you want to do that?
that was like secondary school.
So specific at secondary school.
I know.
A
Well, it's like
vaccine
something.
researcher.
It's like medical, but
But
research,
how
and
come
like
so
all.
specific? Is it like SARS? Then
It's
like, oh, I want to
it was
save
like
people from SARS.
it was like Time Man of the Year, lah. There's a doctor there, Asian American doctor, who was
Wow.
doing research in HIV and stuff like that. So that's kind of like what I wanted to be, like a
I
medical
see.
researcher, right? Now I was reading some books about vaccines and Ebola and things like that.
Oh my
But I think
goodness.
I think I really resonate with that, right? Which is
Yeah.
we all have that like very big passion when we're young, right? And then after that, we actually have to change or tweak it, right, or whatever it is, right? And
Mm.
sometimes it feels like giving up, right?
Yeah, I'm
And then
selling
like
out. That's what I felt like.
selling out, yeah. So yeah, so how do you how should people think about it from your perspective? Like, did you say you were selling out, or did you feel like this is you let go of the old to step into something new? How does that work for you?
I think some of it is ego, some of it is like you are afraid of letting down your community, which in a way I self ascribe to myself. Because what I was the most scared of when I graduated and I didn't get a job. I've never ever got a job in animation. I have up to a master's degree in animation. I never did a full-time job with it. I did some freelance time before, but never full-time. And I was just afraid of my peers judging me actually in the back of my head. I'm like thinking, wow, what do they say? Wow, you see Wei Chun, like he sold out, he's doing marketing now, he's doing like this kind of other stuff that's not animation. How can he give up? This was what. And I kept thinking like there's some kind of unspoken pact that all Singaporean animators have or Singapore animators have. Like we must stick through it and build the industry and have this critical mass of. But actually, like I felt so much guilt, put all this pressure on myself. Then like I go and talk to my friends. Actually, they don't care. Not even, and they won't judge you. Like if they're your friends, they won't judge you. And people who judge you for that kind of thing, they probably have some kind of inner insecurity that they're dealing with as well. Because I think about it from the POV of like me and my fellow graduates from my batch, right? Not everybody is doing animation. And I'm not gonna go like, hey, you see, like person A, like, wow, how can he sell out and not do that? Like, I don't judge them. So if they judge me, then too bad for them. And none of them judge me. So I spent all this time wasting time. I think I sold out. But people understand when they graduate, their life is hard. If you say I'm gonna sell out, then like how about you pay for me? That's how I thought about it eventually. Like if anyone's gonna judge me, then you pay me to be an animator and live my passion. No, if you don't want to do that, then shut up. But nobody thought that anyway. It's so stupid, right? So I spent like 3 years guilting myself over not being animation when I should just get on with business. And actually eventually, right, having sold out and chased money for a while was what allowed me to have enough savings to then start Woke Salaryman without not without any fears lah, but with less fears because I have like 6 months of salary to sort of write on in case it would take a while for us to monetize it. Yeah, lor. That's actually how I go around it.
Yeah, and
So
I
much
think
time
that's interesting,
wasted.
right? Because, and but I think that's interesting, right? Because hashtag selling out, but it's actually
Mm.
kind of like what let you kind of like build up the reserves financially, right?
Yeah.
And also use that to build the Woke Salaryman.
Mm.
And obviously, you've covered the founding journey, obviously about why the team was inspired to build the Woke Salaryman. But for you personally, it feels like also as a personal issue, right? Because you're talking about your debt, you're talking about
Mm.
your
Mm.
reserves, your
Mm.
so how does that work together from your perspective? Like, what attracted you to join or build? Because when you heard the pitch, when you pitched the other person, like what about it was exciting to you
Pitch
personally?
what though? But my company is or like my vision of
No,
what the
the
work
work
celebrity.
salaryman, the vision, when you're pitching to each other, right? You and your co-founder raving, it's just
Well, actually, the
what
genesis
made
of
you say
it,
you wanted to do?
Yeah, the genesis of it was not so pitchy and proper actually. Like because what? Because my co-founder and I have been friends since poly, so we hang out socially anyway, and we're always talking about this stuff. And what we bonded a lot on coming up to the formation of the Woke Salaryman together was always the idea of quitting our jobs because my co-founder wants to do it. I don't speak for him lah, but I think I know him well enough. I think a big reason was that he want to earn more money. For me also because of my dad, because I feel that pressure from behind, like that shackles in my feet that is not comfortable to walk with, and I can't run with these shackles on me. So I also wanted to take it off. So the money was good, but for me, it was really about freedom and stuff. So when we made it together, it was not like we were gonna get funding, we were gonna pitch it and stuff. It's more like a side hustle. We wanted to basically show, like, use the Woke Salaryman as a showcase of our ability to turn boring things into interesting content. Then what we were gonna do is that we were gonna use that as a portfolio to sell workshops. I remember being very enamored when one of my friends was doing workshop. I'm like, huh? You prepare one deck of slides and then you just do like 2-3 hours and you earn like thousands of money, like or thousands of dollars of money each. But they like quite sweet, quite wuhua. So that's what I wanted to do. But interestingly, like even when it comes to business, like I'm that's always the case. Like your passions and your paths in life, it rarely turns out and works out the way you plan. It will work out but in a different way. So when we started, then got sponsored content coming, then turned out that sponsored content route was something that we could do. And then that's what we've been doing. We are selling like workshops sometimes now, but it's not the main bulk of it. It's not nowhere near like the amount of money that we make with sponsored content. Yeah.
What was it like, obviously putting the characters together for the first time, right? So I actually went to
Yeah.
see some of your older work.
Oh
Right? Let me go
no.
back in
It's
time.
awful.
I couldn't tell which one was the first one, but I could see the
Yeah.
evidence
I
of
know
you
which one is the
preparing
worst
yourself.
worst one. Yeah, yeah. I
Not
look
the
at it
worst one, but
sometimes.
the
Yeah.
first one as well.
First one,
Are you
first
gonna say?
one.
Are you saying the first one is the worst one? I mean,
I
isn't that
think
the
so.
most
Like I think
inspired?
so. I think so. But I mean, it's the one that sparked everything. So of course it's special. But I mean, objectively, I'm able to. My inner critic is extremely powerful one, right? Very strong one. So I can judge my work very well and objectively. And the first one was not good. Yeah.
Could you share a little bit more about what was the creative vision or what was the principles that you had when you put together that
Oh,
first, characters into place?
yeah.
Like, what was that, things that you want to communicate? Because I can see the design language, you want to call it,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
motives still
Yeah.
stay. But I'm just kind of curious, what was that, when you were, I don't know, brainstorming, or you must have tried different styles, different
Yes.
iterations. Could have done it the Studio Ghibli approach as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because my actual art style that I naturally draw in, and so I have a side project also of my own that I'm trying to draw this horror comic, and the style is more elaborate lah. The choice of, it's a good question because like it forces me also to think about it now, because sometimes actually it was not so consciously thought of when I assembled the first comic. It just kind of fell into place based on what Riming wrote, and I went for a style that was very efficient. That's the way to say it. I think I was gonna say like a word that is a bit more rabak, like it's lazy. It's not like it's efficiency, because I learned this about being an artist and like publishing stuff on social media. Social media is fast, very very fast. So sometimes if you have to choose between mastery or consistency of publication, right? You have to choose consistency of publication. So you have to have a conscious decision to take the thing that you love and try to design it in a way that you can make it fast enough. That's why our stuff don't have color one. Color is another, will double the time. Maybe I'm not good at color also, but it doubles the time that it'll take to make something. So that was the biggest factor. And it was not easy to do as an artist that had passion, because it's like, hola, I should also express my artistic identity and all this. But actually the how you create a symphony of I like to compare music, like a music can be great because it's elaborate and there's a wall of sound and it's so well produced. But you also see stuff, especially nowadays on TikTok and Instagram, right? You see like teenagers in their bedrooms with just one guitar and very raw vocals doing absolutely like emotionally eliciting things with such a simple thing with flaws even. So it's great that social media has made, because publication is so easy nowadays, right? There's no barrier to that. Typically, I think in the past, why a lot of things sound very polished was that they had to go through the barriers of publication because it's so difficult. You need a company to back you, you need a record label, you need a TV station to say, okay, we'll produce your thing and broadcast for you. So because of those barriers of publication, it became very necessary to show a certain level of polish. And now we break that down and we find that lack of polish can also be something great. We see that, I think, with social media videos also. Like if you look at like TikTok videos and why they work, or YouTube videos and why they work, if you over polish it, sometimes it can kill the authenticity of the piece and make it actually counterintuitive to what you want, which I think a lot of brands actually struggle with. They try to overproduce a video by throwing money at it, but you can't solve everything that way anymore because people won't believe it. They can see, hey, this one, the video so polished, trying to sell me something, right? Then instantly I'm not in already. So that's kind of how we approach our art also. And it has gotten better and more elaborate because I have found more resources to be able to do that. Like we hire people, then now we can add gray shading. Or like my process is cleaner now, then I got space to add in additional quality to the product, which is shading. And then shading will give the drawings more form. But whether they tell the story better, I actually don't know. Sometimes they do, but I've been surprised that because we can see every share that we get on Facebook, like if we put an album of pictures, right, which is a comic strip, we can see individual engagements for each piece. And I'm always wrong about which thing I think, like which panel will be shared the most. I always play this little game with myself. Like I try to guess, like, because I also need to learn about what people like. I'll try to guess like which one is the one that people will share. I remember this one piece about there was a comic about why I'm shamelessly downgrading that my co-founder wrote. Very nice piece. Then the drawing that went the most viral was the simplest thing I had drawn, that it was in the back that I didn't even care about. It was somebody holding a ball with the word enough on the ball. That's it. I didn't draw some elaborate scene or so oftentimes as a creator, what you want is not the same as what the audience wants. And you have to understand that and not let your ego be too hurt by that. That's kind of a roundabout story of how we design the stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that story about it is the simplest thing that you didn't expect. What are the, and I also really appreciated you saying about how social media has changed, like the art direction, right? About what is, you can say, popular, but also what is easily received.
Yeah, I can overproduce
Um,
so easily nowadays.
so for you personally, have you noticed any trends, like you said, other panels, like, you know, versus what you guess versus what people want or reshare? What are the trends do you see at the, differences or surprises to you?
When it comes to trends, it's hard for me to say because our strategy is very specific and we have failed before at a lot of things. Like so it's not just trends, it's also trends where like trends on LinkedIn, different from trends on Facebook, different from trends on Instagram. And sometimes when you cross post, you just kind of get a sense that this one is an Instagram piece. This one will do one on Facebook, but not so well on Instagram and things like that. What we try to rely on is like we try to rely less on trends, even though we do look at them also. Because if your content strategy is very centered around trends, right? I think what happens is that you are chasing the next thing that comes, and trends also is sometimes detected by algorithm because the algorithm will so YouTube will say I want to push shorts, then shorts get pushed more, and then it means that your content will be pushed towards shorts because you are following that thing. And I think you can sort of adjust, like it's a slider of how much do I want to follow. And we try to be timeless, but that's difficult as well. That's why we have our website actually. No, I think very few people go on, or less people go on the website for sure, because nowadays a lot of traffic, most traffic is directed through social media. Those are the main stations in which then you take the sub train or the LRT to another sub line, which is your website. Nobody goes on to website like I'm gonna see what's available on thisthing.com now. Like I think that's a lot rarer. So the website is actually just a place for us to have our content in case some of these like social media websites decide to play weird pattern. And they play weird pattern before. Like Facebook playing weird pattern with us now. Like Facebook is just going in a direction that I feel is counter to the kind of content that we make. And I understand that from a business that that's what they want to do. It's fine, but we need to adapt, and that's why we need to diversify. That's why we went on LinkedIn in the first place. I wasn't very keen on going on LinkedIn. I saw it as a flag planting exercise, but now that we've been on LinkedIn, I also discovered that there are very nice things about the LinkedIn algorithm. Like for example, it's slow. Like things are discoverable like for much longer on LinkedIn because the feed will push things that are like 2-3 weeks old. Which I used to think like, "Ayah, why so slow?" But actually, there's something nice about it. It's nice to see like comments and engagement still tinkling in like after like weeks after you posted something. Where Facebook is like always the newest thing. Ba, 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 ba. So trend wise, I very hard to say. The thing that we try to lean on when it comes to, maybe I can say in terms of storytelling, that like some of the classic techniques that we use. I think we mainly do two kinds of stories, and sometimes we push the boundaries. So the first kind is your TED talk. It's like a presentation, straightforward presentation. Here's what bonds are and how you can use them. That's a very straightforward one. A second kind is more like personal like narrative, but narrative got some kind, got like personal story kind, like how a 28-year-old got leukemia and had to deal with her bills. Or we try to let's say bonds, right? If you want to talk about bonds in a different way, we can do it in a story way also. A story way would be more like, and this is the easiest way to do it, but it's a bit like hokey and hacky to say this now, but like it's like two people having a conversation. So have you heard of Bonds? What Bond? The only Bond is James Bond that I know of. Well, Bonds, then they have a convo, but you're saying sort of the same points. Or it could be something like it's a story where like there's one that I'm very excited to release, but we haven't thought of when to release it. But we wrote a story about a couple that broke up on Valentine's Day because they argue about money. So that doesn't teach much technical things, but it's a story that hopefully tug some heartstrings. But there's a bit of thinking underneath the layers of uh there's some brain wrapped up in all the heart. Lah. That's how I like to put it. You know, because you tell this kind of story, it's like it's more feeling and less thinking. But we also try to put some thinking inside. And the thinking actually for that piece would be at some point when you are meeting somebody, have a talk about life, money, and all these unpleasant things. Because if you don't talk about it earlier, when it comes up later, it will be extremely awful. Because you go in a deep relationship without talking about these things, because you're scared of talking about it. Then come to find out when you're on the precipice of taking the next step that all your things long term are misalignment. So I always like to say the formula for that kind of story is heart, brain, heart. Like we wrap the brain around two layers of heart at the beginning and the end. Because you hook them in the beginning with some semblance of heart, say your lesson in the middle, then end it with heart again so that they can take it away. So maybe these are some story, templates that we use. Like.
No, amazing to hear about your templates like TED Talk versus story time versus discussion.
Mm,
And I think all of it is a form of translation, right? Because I think obviously it's easy to do art for entertainment in that sense or art for inspiration, but you're doing what I call like very technical or finance language, right?
mm, mm.
And terms, and you're translating that for, I guess the woke salaryman, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
the general mass audience, right? Um, have there been any challenges that when you translate such complicated topics right to
Mm.
this right? Because I mean, give an example would be like CPF, right? I think you did one, and I always think to myself like CPF can get very very
Mm-hmm.
overly simplified. It's
Yeah,
either like CPF is amazing to
yeah,
return my CPF, right? And then it's
yeah.
just like those are the two
Exactly,
camps,
man.
right? And then everything else is just like And I thought you did quite. I wouldn't say that, but also said adjacent work where you kind of unbundled or try to explain it in a more thoughtful way, right?
Mm.
So have there been challenges in translating that kind of like, I don't know,
Yeah,
language or
I
and
know.
content? Like how does that
Yes.
happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you get it because that was a good question. Like there is there's so many things to say about this because there's first off there's nuance, then there's also neutrality, and I think we have very passionate things to say about both of these things also because we also ply our trade in the B2C space. I like to think because we put stuff out there that is seen by the public, and our target audience is and that is our ultimate client. Our client is actually not the sponsors. The sponsors are only here because we are able to capture the attention of our real clients, which is the readers, right? So it's a difficult thing to balance, because you also don't want to piss off anybody. There's cancel culture looming as a threat, and that is, I think, my co-founder's greatest my fear as well. I think he's just very scared of like saying the wrong thing, so we're always watching what we say now in public, uh, and what you asked about this like translation is that I always find that it's very hard because there's not that there's no space. What tends to go viral, and virality is not a must for content publishers, but it's extremely helpful. But what tends to go viral is definite stands, or like when you can clearly say this is bad or this is good. But what is often closer to the truth and what is often much more helpful is nuanced take where you can see the reason in both POV and you don't necessarily need to say at the end of it, this is good or this is bad. There's a quote that says something, I don't know who said it, but like intelligence is the ability to hold opposing points of view. That is at the core of how we try to think about it. Like every time, and we do this for fun in the office anyway. When Rumi and I talk, my co-founder Rumi and I talk, we will try to take the opposite position of something for the fun of it. Immediate or like automatically when he posits something to me, I immediately try to take the opposite point of view. And he does the same also. And that's how we sharpen this point. Then you have things like neutrality, politics. What stand do you take? And that is difficult also. We don't do it so much in terms of like actually we do left wing, right wing. And there's validity in both. There's like the left wing, for example, just generally might want to see less tax cuts for the rich, more given out to everybody to spread out the pie a bit more evenly. Then the rich would preach for agency, like the idea that everybody is able to take their life in their hands and control it and upgrade themselves to be the best of who they want, and they want a free market and all that kind of stuff. Both are not wrong. It's hard to say both together. And I think what a lot of content creators end up doing is that they stand directly in the middle. And when you do that, you make content that doesn't say anything at all. You just kind of like poke a slightly, like nudge a bit, hey, this side I say this. Well, this side I say this. And then you end up saying nothing. What we do to maintain neutrality is that sometimes we say a piece on the left. We say, here's why this. Like one that we did recently was we said something like, why we should stop blaming the poor for being poor. Very left. But we have done a piece also before that about agency, about something like how much in life is actually up to you, which is actually about agency. These two things you put together, it seems like they contradict, but they don't. I sleep very well at night because I agree with both pieces, even though they seem to go in the opposite directions. So your question also about translating that middle ground is inherently difficult for social media because we are not in a lecture setting. We are not in a postgraduate setting where we have time to be nuanced, and we are constantly running up against the idea that our comics are too long. People tell us that all the time. If you go and see our Instagram, our stuff actually don't work natively very well on Instagram because we have so many panels and Instagram album is max 10 that we have to put 4 comic panels in one panel to fit everything in. That's how long-winded we are, and we've chosen to be that way. We've tried TikTok before. We just suck at it because we are naturally very long-winded. Because we think that's necessary to communicate that nuance. And that is what is needed to carry somebody from the basic first level of knowledge of awareness or something through the difficult middle muddy part. You have to understand that there's nuance. And knowledge is difficult. Like you said the example of CPF. I think that's a great example. Maybe it's just that CPF, and I'm not a very financially savvy. I know I run the Woke Salaryman, but like I'm the art half, so I also don't want to say this, then Riming tell me actually I said it wrong. So take this with a huge grain of salt. Maybe CPF is complicated because it has to be, because if you oversimplify, it just doesn't work as a product that the government wants it to be, or that the whoever wants it to be. So you also can kind of understand why some people cannot understand it and find it difficult, because it really is a lot of aspects to it. That's why there's all this written by CPFs. And maybe what you can do in terms of social engineering or policy engineering is to come up with a way to make it simple and yet work. But if it's necessarily complicated, like it can't work without it being complicated, then what? How the communication part is so difficult. How are we gonna make this necessarily complicated thing easy enough, but not too easy where they take the wrong thing away? And that's something we haven't solved. And it's a great question because we ask ourselves that every single week. We're looking at it like, oh, it's so complex. But if we don't explain this in the entirety, people get the wrong idea. We also don't want to do that. Even if we can be populist, because you can do populist things very easily. Just say things, just repeat the shit that people say in the comments of like Straits Times or Mothership. Just repeat it and then make it slightly more like elaborate. You can have a populist piece that does very well. But what we try to be is like, we don't want to just be somebody that says things that you like to hear. We want to be, oh, this sounds so cocky to say this, but that's really the approach. We want to be a good friend. And a good friend won't just tell you things you want to hear. A good friend might tell you, dude, you got to stop doing that. It's hurting you. And that's kind of how we try to strike that balance. Yeah, so it's very difficult. I hope that kind of answers it.
That is a very nuanced and neutral answer, but also a very deep one. Because, like you said, I think the truth is, finance is hard. I mean, life is harder, even, right? And life is full of crap, right? And there's like life, there's death, there's kids, there's marriage, there's divorce, there's caregiving. There's so many different aspects about life, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's money
Wait, you cut out
associated with
after
all these
divorce,
events,
sorry.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Perhaps a
Maybe
bit
can you hear me
accurate.
now?
Yeah, can.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I just
A
got
bit
cut off after
fitting, right? Yeah.
divorce. Yeah, a bit fitting, right? Yeah. So what I was saying was like life is complicated, right? Because
Mm,
it's like marriage, divorce, kids, death, caregiving,
yeah.
school. So there's all kinds of different aspects and finances. The resourcing and the trade-offs and the fact that life is
Yes.
not free or fair
Yeah.
or easy, right?
Yeah.
No matter what we want to say or no matter what we listen to on Disney.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that's a tricky part of the conversation, right? I think one part that as I think about it is when I obviously think about the content and everything, I realize that a big part about personal finance is I feel like there's like two parts of it, right? One part is like I want more,
Mm.
and the other part is uh there's scarcity, right? There's the life is unfair, or I don't know what's the word.
When you say you want more, you mean
It's
what?
not
Like you want more
unlimited.
money, lah. You want to be richer, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like maybe I'm just a consumer, right? It feels like to me those are like the two like parts, right? It's like there's always that desire for more, which is why you have to think about
Yeah.
enough, right? And the other part is like, you're not allowed to have unlimited things, right? You have a finite amount of time on Earth, you have a
Mm.
finite amount of money, finite
Mm.
amount of health, right? So I don't know. It feels like those are the two. I don't know what
Yeah,
part
but
which
the second
determines
part getting
more.
longer though, and I think that's why people are getting depressed because we're living longer. So I agree with you. There's always this tug of like, and I think like me and my co-founder we are very long convos about this guy. I think he's a bit more on that first side, and I lean a bit more towards that second side where I'm more to the spendy section where I think life is also about experiences and things like that. And I think I don't need to chase independent like financial independence so quickly. But my co-founder feels like for him it's a big priority. But I think what we learned through that is that there's no right answer also. But honestly, also sometimes our content makes me feel like a bit kanchong or a bit like worried that I'm not doing enough because as the nature of what we do, we also tend to be surrounded by our peers in the industry who are also experts in personal finance. So they know so like yourself. I remember meeting you at the dinner at Juliana's place, and I was intimidated actually by everybody there because there's angel investors here and a VC over there, and like people who have seen and experienced money. But I mean, ultimately, are all humans also. So the same fears, insecurities, whatever, is still there. But I feel myself being tugged. Like you're the average of the five people, the closest five people to you. So he tugs me in this way, and I don't know if I tug him. I don't do it on purpose, but I think I also do. Like I'll talk about like how much actually do you need, because it might never be enough, and like what are you actually earning so much money and building so much money for? Like I think if your answer to that question is okay, like it's okay to say, oh, I want a Lamborghini and a landed property in Singapore, which are both expensive things. If you know it, then can go. But like I also know people because when you first start earning money, it feels good. Your problems are alleviated, and you get the idea that more money equals more happiness. But at some point, I think it stops. I don't know what that point is. An American study said like something like $70 a year. I don't know true or not. Uh, but I also think everybody maybe got a different point lah. And I have a definite point in my head. But every time I think that there's a point, I get to it. Then I like, hey, actually, I want a bit more. Then I'll turn on the engines again. And like for me, I'm thinking, well, if I can get financial independence, i.e., like $1.2 million invested in various things, I'm done already. But then I think when I get there, I'll be like, hey, but actually, I might want a bit more, you know? So I also don't know how to settle this thing. It seems like every time I get close to being okay, my life will, the new perspective will come. But I think as long as I'm not doing it in an unsustainable way, it's okay lah. I think ultimately, like the way I want to like spend my old age is working on my craft, which is making comics. If I can have that life, I think I'm okay already lah. Yeah. How about you, Jeremy?
Oh, I love what you're sharing, right? Which is that, I think so many people look at, the founders and the team, right, at Woke
Yeah.
Salaryman as being, they know everything and,
No lah.
100% woke,
No.
100%
No such thing,
Salaryman,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
I
I
think the
know.
woke
But it's
ceremony
nice.
is an ideal that we aspire to. So like people say like welcome to the woke ceremony, and I'll some if you're not too rude, I will say I'm not the woke ceremony. Like it's the brand. We are people working for this thing. I actually want to ask you, are you retired or what? Do
No,
you need to worry about money now?
well, long story short is yes, right? Because, at the end of the day, we have family, right? And I think one of the big transitions points for myself personally,
Yeah,
what I realize is that
yeah.
I think when you're working for yourself, I think there's a certain amount of financial goals that that are there. But I think
Mm,
as a kid or teenager, you don't never really think about your own kids.
of course.
And now that I have two young daughters, both under the age of 2 years old right now, obviously then you start thinking about school and scenarios and what if they get sick and
But are
stuff
they
like
that
that. So
expensive? I mean, like, I'm gonna sound damn naive, lah, but I also would like to hear from somebody like you who, because I hear angel investor, I'm like, wow, I must be damn rich, because you are investing with your own money in other people's things. You must be damn rich already, lah. So still need to worry about this kind of thing because I feel like something my friend said about kids that I always thought very intriguing was that he said, kids in Singapore cost as much as you want it to cost. There's that baseline necessity thing, but then after that, it's just how much you want to add on, lah. So how are you projecting that situation, and like does that even like dent your financial situation much? For somebody that I would think is doing quite okay.
yeah, it's a good question. I think, frankly, I 100% agree that I think raising children is as expensive as you want it to be
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
sense. And I think there's also a lot of, actually recent science that shows that actually, as a parent, you can't really change too much about your life's, your
Really?
child's life. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing you can do to change your child's life
Yeah.
is choose your partner because, you know, their
Oh,
genes
that's
and their
interesting. Yeah,
environment,
yeah.
all of that is really
That's
determined by your
fifty
partner.
percent.
But
Yeah,
50% in terms of there, but it's also
yeah.
way more than, if you think about it, it's almost everything, right? It's like that small decision is effectively your children, right? Basically.
That's true. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then and then I think the science shows like there's only like three things that a parent can really change, right?
yeah.
They can they can change your professed religion, but not your spiritual institution
Yes.
participation rate.
Yep.
So so they can change your professed political identification,
Yes.
but
Yes.
you can't really change their actual beliefs.
Yes.
And the third thing they can change is how much they love you. So,
Yep.
but you can't really change, you can't really change like their personality. You can't really change their lifetime education. You can't really change their lifetime earnings
But you
significantly.
can
And all these are
influence
all
it strongly,
marginal.
right? Actually.
I think the science is basically saying that it's not too much
Also, it's
because they do this.
all nature and less nurture, is it?
It's more less about the fact that it's not less nurture. It's more like at the end of the day, parents actually do a lot less nurture than they think they do. So
Ah, I see.
what
I
I mean
see.
by that is that the kid is growing up, they hang out with their family, their
Yes.
environment, their school,
Yes.
their friends, the
Yeah.
media, what they're watching on
Yes. Yes.
TV. They become teenagers, then they become rebellious. They want to do their own thing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think so. Direct parenting doesn't really have those influences, but I think what parents can really construct is the environment that the kids are in, right?
Oh,
for
okay.
example.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about
You know, if your children grow up in a good school or
it.
with good teachers, those are things that you can really control to some
Mm.
extent. But it's much softer, right,
To
than
some,
school.
yeah, you can't control the whole way also. Yeah,
Exactly, right?
yeah.
So I thought it was a really interesting. I read that book before having kids, and I was like, that was quite calming. You know, it changed my
Mm.
mindset from like, I don't know, being
It's all up to you from like I just try my best and I surround her with what the best I can do and we'll
exactly. I
see
think
what
I moved
happens.
away more from I moved more from a construction approach to
Mm.
parenting to more of a
Guiding.
gardening approach.
Got it.
You
Yeah,
know,
right, right.
yeah,
Yep,
that
yep.
makes sense, right? You know,
Yes,
because
yes.
construction is like, if I don't build,
Yeah.
it will
It's
not
not happening.
it
Yeah,
will
yeah.
not grow. It's not
Yeah.
happening. And if I build it wrong, it will be broken.
Yep.
And if I screw up the first step, the whole thing is broken
Yes.
and embedded, right? Whereas gardening is the opposite approach, right? Which is that
Yep.
the children will grow up, and your job is to guide, prune, obviously if there's
And you
any
can
concerns.
overdo it also. Like if you overwater your plants, they're gonna die. Which is what I always do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also killed my first plant that way. I remember I was very happy to buy my first ever plant.
Actual plant, lah, right? Not a kid, lah, right?
Not a kid. No, no, not my first kid. No, actual plant. And I was like, like put one scoop of fertilizer. And I was like, oh, put two more
Yes,
seeds
yes,
inside,
yes.
right? And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
killed it, right?
Lucky you learned that lesson before you had the kid, lah, right?
Yeah. So I think gardening approach to children is how I
Oh,
look
that's
at it. So
interesting, man.
yeah. Um, and so, I think one thing, obviously I'd love to ask for you is, could you share with us a time that you personally have been brave?
I think got a lot, but like the stories will be too difficult to tell. But I think that the easiest one to say was I think bravery is there's a Mike Tyson quote that everybody quotes that I think is just great, and it's not his quote. He's quoting his coach Castamato. It's something like courage is not. I mean, courage and bravery I'm gonna use as the same thing, but I think it's similar. Courage is not the lack or the absence of fear. It's the ability to act in the presence of fear. And so when I thought about this question, which is a good one, I think back to when I felt the most fear and when I acted anyway. And I think for me right now in my adult life, the point would be when I quit my job to start this company. And it's not a big deal, honestly. Like if you just look at the factors I had to play with, the amount of money that I saved up, it's not say a very perilous journey. But for me, it's a huge deal because the amount of fear that I felt was very immense. Like I've always wanted to do this entrepreneurship thing. And then here it is, this thing that we've built, we've monetized, that has steady income coming in. Uh, and still I didn't dare to take the leap. And I actually did this in April 2020. That's when I quit my job. And April 2020 was when the COVID situation was just starting to hit. I remember very clearly my boss, Abel, who I'm still like good friends with, and I really look up to him as like sort of almost a mentor. I mean, he doesn't mentor me, lah, but I really look up to what he does, and I read his writings and stuff. He told me like, "Hey, Richard, are you sure you want to quit? Because if you quit, I have to replace you, and then I don't know if I can get you your job back. I would love to keep you, so can you be very careful about this decision because COVID is coming." So it was really difficult, but what really swung it for me and allowed me, and like you were saying about gardening and parenting, was my parents that they didn't tell me what to do, and they are themselves they have company also lah. They started a company themselves also, a logistics company in Malaysia. And I always ask them like, should I quit? Should I quit? Because they know about this stuff, I think. And they always tell me, don't rush it, don't rush it, don't rush it. But when I presented my factors to them of I got this thing that I'm starting, I think they still don't fully understand what I do. It's the only time I've been able to tell them what I do and they can't understand is when I was interviewed for Zhao Bao with my co-founder. Because in the Chinese, kind of very hard at explaining, like even personal finance, I have to look up how to say it's like 私人财经 or something in Chinese. And I lousy at that. So they look at the financial factors and then the job and stuff. Then they say, actually, you can consider. Why not? What do you have to lose? And when they said that, I'm like, okay. So I related it to your gardening thing because it's like they didn't tell me what to do. They gave me like, gardening, you can put the post, then the plant will grow around the pole. So that's what they are to me. Like I'm still doing the growing. Um, but they are that pole that helped me to understand, okay, now you go upwards. Then they stick the pole down there and go up. And that is the greatest thing they can give me. This freedom, but also this guidance and structure from the back. Structure is where it's at. Yeah, you tell me roughly how to approach it. Don't do it for me. Don't do it with me. Don't pull my hand through it unless I need your help that way. So the fear that I felt in approaching that decision was almost cripplingly like difficult. I had sleepless nights thinking. Cause I'm like thinking, wow, my future. What if I miss this chance? Never get again. Could be a once in a lifetime thing. Why not just try it? Blah 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 and all this stuff. And I think if the factors were slightly different, I would not have done it. Like if say I had a kid, I might not have done it because I'm thinking, wow, how can I put this on the family? And then my wife have to go and carry the load. If I can't make money for the next 6 months, how? So I thought it was the bravest thing I did. It's not the bravest thing anyone has ever done, but the amount of fear that was in my head, wow, I was so wrecked with paralysis for a while. And then like my co-founder was just do it. In fact, he was actually not helpful at all because of how chill he was with it, which is not a knock on him, but it's just how neurotic I naturally am. I overthink things all the time. So I was assaulted by just all these possibilities of things that could go wrong. And it's still I think a miracle that I even managed to take the leap. I don't know how I did it. Yeah. That was the bravest thing I did.
Why the fear, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, right? Your co-founder is chill, your parents are supportive,
Yeah.
at least after discussing it. On reflection now, obviously, you've had some time now, and obviously you've seen other friends, build their own things now. Um, is there any nuance now, I guess, to that fear that you now have the benefit of hindsight to look on and see
Yeah,
that,
there
oh,
is
okay, it
some
was fear?
the fear I think comes from I think ego also because I was afraid of starting this thing and being associated with not having this thing work out. And not a nice thing to say, but I think I also subconsciously judge people who are failed entrepreneurs for last time because I wanted to be one and I didn't want to ever fail at being one. So I also take it out on people that I see who tried it and failed. And that is awful that I did that. It's not easy to realize that I was doing that. And now I have the utmost respect for people who failed because only by going through all the stories of people who are brave enough to share their journeys of how they failed did I learn what it took to make a business work and what it can do to derail a business. And that fear is real. Fear keeps you alive, right? It stops you from being just completely reckless. So you need it, but sometimes you can get it to the point of paralysis, and that's not good either. You can freeze when something dangerous is coming for you, and that works sometimes, like in Jurassic Park, because the T Rex can only see things that move. Maybe for T Rex it works, but you do that or for bears, But you do that for the wrong species, it will mess you up. You're dead. So you also have to rationally be able to overcome and go. What does this situation require? Is it fear? Or at least let the fear take you and understand it and rationalize it, take the feeling you get from here and go, why is my body and my soul telling me to be careful about this? Let's look at the rational factors then. Okay, actually I've accounted for this stuff, let's go ahead anyway. And is that action in the presence of fear, then that is courage or bravery. So that's why I try to tell my students who feel fear about doing certain things. It's like let your brain help you. Fear is from the depths of your heart, like it's a very intuitive thing. You feel it first before you even realize what it is. But that's why you go university. That's why you sharpen your mind, your ideas, so that you can let it help you. So it's like the devil angel thing, and you're not clear sometimes which is the angel, which the devil is. That's the problem in life. Like you get the angel devil all the time. You just don't know which one is which. It's not so clear that one is a halo and then the other one has a scepter and the demonic wings and the other one has feathers, and a robe. That's the problem. But your brain will help you go, okay, wait, let's think about this. Let's think about it. So let your brain help you, lor. I think that's the maybe not the nuance lah, but the coping mechanism that I've come up with in order to also as a lecturer now give some sort of structure for my students to think about things like this kind of fear. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Uh, I really love that, and I love to recap. I think there are three big themes that I got from this discussion. The first, of course, is thank you for sharing about what was it like to have your creative spark and your childhood passion, and how that plus also your desire to strike out your own path led you to found the Woke Salaryman. And I think a lot of the principles that you have, right, that you're not the Woke Salaryman, but it's an ideal that you're working towards. I think that's such a beautiful humanity to it, right? I think the second, of course, is I really appreciate you going to the trade craft of discussing like, okay, building efficient art, because of the algorithms and the social media trends that are there today. But also, I think a lot of the translation work that's needed to take finance as a topic into something that's consumable, right, and understandable in terms of nuance versus neutrality, right? And I think you said it in the context of the broader culture as well. So I think a lot of thought there. And lastly, I really appreciate that last hindsight, right? Which is that you talk about how the fear of being a founder, uh, how that how you went about resolving it, but also I think recognizing, I think with the benefit of time and age, I guess that we all of us have now,
Mm,
that there's a lot of ego there, right? Because there's
mm,
judgment of other founders who failed and screwed up, right? From our perspective, and now we realize like we don't want to be the one screwing up because we are proud, we're associated to the organization, right? And that ego piece drives the fear, right? And I really love what you said, a quote about being able to act in spite of the fear, right?
mm.
And I love, I think, your guidance on how to kind of like harness your brain and your heart to kind of like push forward.
How
So
did you
thank you so
remember all
much.
that, dude? You write down, is it?
I wrote a few notes, yeah.
Oh wow, that's insane that you basically just I can't even remember halfway through what I say already, but you just recap the whole thing.
I'm the list. My role is to be the listener, and I love listening to
No,
podcasts.
thanks for sharing also all your parenting. The stuff about the garden, I think that's fantastic. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah,
Maybe one day there'll be a woke salary
yeah, yeah, it could
under
be,
another
could
topic.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Maybe when both of you have the kids and everything. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. This has been fun. Thanks for listening and yeah, listening keenly and also having a conversation and letting me ask you some questions also.